One click. That was the only sound in the most dangerous room in Ankara. While the British ambassador was sleeping quietly just feet away, his valet was snapping photos of the blueprints. Blueprints so important, it could have changed the fate of the war. But when he gave the Nazis information, he became the punchline of a joke. Instead of counting his fortune, he was handcuffed, spending the rest of his life in poverty. This is how the greatest spy of World War II was conned, and Germany lost the war because of it. Elyesa Bazna, later codenamed Cicero, wasn't just your typical World War II spy. He was a man defined by a chip on his shoulder the size of the Bosphorus. Born in Kosovo, he moved to Turkey with the ambitions of becoming an opera singer. He wanted the spotlight, the wealth, and the adoration of the public. Instead, he was handed a servant's uniform, spending his days polishing silver and pressing trousers for the foreign elite in Ankara. But his resentment quickly began boiling over, and since he was already deeply entrenched in the Allied elite, his invincibility quickly became an asset. Hired by Sir Hugh Knatchbull Hugesson, the British ambassador to Turkey in 1943, Bazna gained access to the elite. Sir Hugh was a highly intelligent diplomat, but possessed one fatal flaw. He was an aristocrat of the old school, believing gentlemen didn't read each other's mail, and the last person he expected to do so was his servants. He treated Bazna with the needed respect, even believing him to be part of the furniture and someone he could fully trust. But this blind fate would prove to be the first domino in a catastrophe that nearly cost the Allies the war. With Turkey being mostly neutral in World War II, the British Embassy's security protocols were surprisingly lax in Ankara. Sir Hugh had a habit of taking top-secret boxes home with him, leaving his keys on his bedside table or inside his trousers while playing the piano or taking a bath. Meanwhile, his valet, Elyesa Bazna, was a man with higher ambitions than being a servant, watching this routine with the predatory patience of a lion. He quickly realized how distracted the ambassador was by the comforts of his high status, leaving many secrets unguarded. For Bazna, the motivation wasn't ideology. He despised Hitler. It was something far darker, pure, coldly mercenary. He wanted money. He wanted the high life. So one day in 1943, he fashioned a wax impression of the red dispatch box. He had a locksmith create the duplicate and purchased a camera. Bazna was ready to make his move. On October 26th, he made his move, like a thief in the night, opening the box and snapping pictures of the high-level Foreign Office telegrams just feet away from his master. It was tense, but Bazna had done the unthinkable. Yet, this is where he ran into a problem. Getting the secrets is one thing. Selling them is entirely different. Bazna approached the German embassy, a masterclass in audacity. His first contact was a German diplomat named Albert Jenke, but later it was passed to the commercial attaché Ludwig Moisich. But when Bazna demanded £20,000 for a single roll of unprocessed film, Moisich was skeptical. He believed it to be a British trap, or perhaps a sting operation. Yet he took the bait, and when the film was developed, the skepticism quickly turned into stunned silence. The documents were genuine. In fact, it was so good that German ambassador Franz von Papen gave the valet a code name, Cicero, reflecting the eloquence of the stolen documents. And once the channel was opened, the floodgates broke. Throughout late 1943 and early 1944, Bazna provided a constant, steady stream of intelligence. Minutes from the Tehran Conference, where Stalin, Churchill, and Roosevelt discussed the final war strategy, pressuring Turkey into joining the war, and strategic RAF bombing operations. In fact, the whole process became so mundane that Bazna simply waited for Sir Hugh to bathe or sleep, open the dispatch box, photograph the papers, and return them exactly as they were. He'd meet Mojsic, exchange the film for British pounds, and repeat. Bazna was becoming a very wealthy man, and with his wealth came the big dreams. But inside the hallways of Berlin, suspicion began to grow. His information was perfect, too perfect. And in the paranoid world of the Third Reich, perfection was the ultimate red flag. Everyone strives for perfection, but the irony of Cicero lies not in the theft, but in the consumption of intelligence. In Berlin, the documents landed on the desks of men who hated each other. One such man was Joachim von Ribbentrop, the foreign minister, who despised the SS intelligence chief, Ernst Kaltenbrunner. This meant that each time Mojsic sent the Cicero documents to Berlin, Ribbentrop dismissed them. He was convinced that a valet could not possibly outsmart the British intelligence service. He argued that Cicero was a plant, a double agent fed by the British to deceive Germany, or simply just the risk of espionage, where the truth is rejected because it didn't fit the recipient's worldview. Essentially, Bazna was risking his life each night to steal gold, and the Nazis were treating it like lead. It finally concluded when he stole the documents for Operation Overlord, or the D-Day invasion of Normandy. The Germans knew something was coming, but they didn't trust the source. They scrutinized it to death, but ultimately ignored it. And while the Germans were bickering, the British began smelling a rat. Having cracked the enigma, the British descended on the embassy in Ankara, and even under interrogation, Bazna kept his cool. He evaded any capture, and now, having stolen more than 300,000 pounds of secrets from the British, he needed to cash out. So, in the spring of 1944, realizing now everything was a trap, he quit his job at the embassy and disappeared, leaving Sir Hugh none the wiser. His goal was to become a tycoon, but fate had something entirely different planned for the spy. First, the German paralysis was absolute, and they refused to adjust their defenses based on the intel. He could have won them the war, but the bureaucracy of the Nazi state failed to act. Then, after a year of hiding, Elyesa Bazna emerged from the shadows. The war was over. He began investing in construction, planning a luxury hotel that would stand as a monument to his cleverness. But when he went to the banks to deposit his vast stacks of British pounds, the tellers paused. They called in the managers. The managers called in the police. It turned out that the German intelligence services, operating under Operation Bernard, had been mass-producing counterfeit British currency to destabilize the British economy. The 300,000 pounds they had paid Bazna, the money he had risked his life for, night after night, under the nose of the British ambassador, was fake. All of it. Bazna was arrested for using counterfeit currency, and though he served little time, he spent the rest of his years living in poverty. He tried to sue the Western government, but in the end, he died penniless in Munich in 1970. It was the perfect irony, or karma, if you will. But do you think what happened to Bazna was fair? Let us know in the comments below. And always remember, history doesn't die, it just echoes.